Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's Weekly Wrap. It's the 24th of April, 2026. I'm Luke Harris, and I'm joined by Patrick Garrett. How are you, Pat?
Very well. How are you?
I'm going really well, man. I'm going really well. How's your week been?
Very good. Very busy, and just limping over the line.
It does feel like that every Friday. I must admit, it does feel like that every Friday. Well, look, Patrick, thank you for joining me today, mate. We love having you on the screen. Before we go any further, I guess some sad news to share with you all. Last Friday evening, Mirko's father, Mirko Sr., passed away at the age of 85, just 3 months short of his 86th birthday. And I guess from that point of view, our hearts go out to Mirko. But just from our perspective, Mirko's dad was a gentle, kind-hearted man who deeply loved his family. He lived a full and meaningful life, marrying his beloved wife Anna before making the brave decision to emigrate to Australia back in 1969. And those early years here weren't easy, but they faced them with determination and resilience and giving it everything they had. Now, over that time, they built a life grounded in family, community, and generosity, and he raised a wonderful son in Mirko Jr., who we all love, and has remained a constant positive presence in the lives of those around him, always giving more than ever expected in return. He truly embodied, I guess, what it means to live a life well lived, and his absence will be deeply felt. From our perspective, to our dear Mirko, we extend our sincere condolences to you, your beautiful mum, and your entire family. Losing a parent in one's life is one of the hardest moments, and our thoughts, as well as those of our clients, are with you during this difficult time. So, here to Mirko. So that was a bit tough for him last week, I dare say, Pat.
Yeah, very, very.
Yeah. Never easy losing a parent, and unfortunately, that's the way the life goes. Yeah, so it's just one of those hard ones.
Exactly. Yep.
Absolutely. All right. Well, look, maybe we might move on to the market side of things and just give a quick update. It seems a little bit stupid giving a market update straight after that, but it just kind of makes sense, I guess. For the week, we've had a bit of an interesting week this week in the sense that we've had the Dow and the Nasdaq both up slightly in the United States. The Dow's up about 1% and the Nasdaq about 0.5%. Yet the All Ordinaries are down 2% in that same period. And I guess from that point of view, it just extends on the discussion that we had last week, Pat, between Mirko, myself, and Anthony, where we were just having a chat. And we were talking about the irony between the United States and between Australia and how the United States seems to always move forward, yet here in Australia, we tend to be a lot more cynical. You've been in the markets for a very long time as well, mate. You're not surprised by that? The Australian market's always a touch more cynical?
Yeah, and it's almost like a two-tier system now, which is, usually they go in tandem, but it just always feels like we're always that little bit behind, even though our time zone's in front. It always takes us a bit longer to recover than the US.
Yeah, and we always seem to be, we tend to focus a lot more on the negativity rather than the positive. One thing about the US, it's one thing I've always admired about the US. They are quite aspirational in that regard, but they can be a bit negative. And I guess if we think about the markets and what's been causing it here in Australia, March inflation data again is, the headline rate's coming at 3.3 for year on year. And this has been driven by energy prices again. So from that point of view, so if we think about those sorts of things, odds on favourite now that the RBA will raise interest rates again. We're seeing the geopolitical issues not get resolved. Donald Trump, we have a ceasefire, we don't have a ceasefire, we're stopping boats, now we're blockading boats. It just seems to be an absolute shit show in terms of what they're trying to do. And I'm not sure they're making any progress. And I think the fear we all share is the longer this thing goes on, the worse it's going to get. So that's a challenge. Interestingly enough, we've seen CSL really cop a pounding over the last 12 months on the back of vaccines and on the back of the vaccine mandates and all that kind of stuff, particularly coming out of the US, and then on the tariffs and the imposition of those tariffs from that point of view. And now we've seen Cochlear cop a similar amount, and their share price has come off about 40% to a 10-year low following a major update. So I guess if you think about Cochlear, if you think about CSL, two major stocks on the Australian exchange, and both got hurt pretty hard. It's been tough for those two.
Very, yeah. And it's quite funny you're saying we're talking about inflation and raising rates again, whereas you look at the US and it looks like they might be decreasing rates.
Yeah.
So it's a very different story as we speak.
Yeah, we're not running in sync, that's for sure. We're not running in sync. Now, interestingly enough, Meta has announced over the last couple of days that they plan to cut 8,000 jobs, which is roughly 10% of its workforce, and pivot resources towards artificial intelligence. 8,000 people is a lot of people out of work. If this is adding on to all the other firms that are doing this sort of stuff. It's starting to ring true that there's going to be a lot of people out of work at some future point in time.
And where do they rotate into? Do they stay in the same sectors, or they rotate to somewhere else?
Yeah, look, it's going to be interesting in terms of the way that works out. I think it's going to be definitely interesting from that end. And I think the other thing that's probably also worth mentioning, we saw that Apple as well. Tim Cook, who's been the CEO of Apple, he recently announced that he'll actually be stepping down after nearly 15 years, which has seen the company reach $4 trillion market valuation. Now, $4 trillion, that's just an extraordinary amount of money. Elon Musk, I think, is worth $3.
I was going to say, when your 11-year-old son talks about Tim Cook retiring, you know that he's obviously wrapped up the market in the tech sector.
Yeah, no, he definitely has, mate. If your 11-year-old son's quoting that, mate, we've got to worry. We've got to worry. But look, Lockie can come and work here anytime he wants, mate. We love Lockie. We think he's awesome. Now, there's a lot that's happened domestically this week, and normally we pivot and we speak about Iran and we speak about Donald Trump, but they're kind of boring us at the moment, not because they're not important, but we just keep on rehashing the same sort of stuff, I guess, from that point of view. So, look, from our perspective, there are a couple of major big issues this week. Mark Butler, the Minister for Health and Ageing, got up and delivered a keynote address in relation to the NDIS and aged care. And the NDIS has been a big one, Pat. The cost of this thing has blown out of epic proportions. And what started out as a genuine reform and wanting to help, and I think most Australians put their hand up and said, this is a fantastic initiative, particularly for those who need it the most. We've seen this reform get abused sideways from that point of view. And I guess if we look back at what Mark Butler spoke about over the week, what he's looking at doing is looking at tightening the rules. So fewer people are in, stricter funding, and slowing the growth. And this is all about reining in costs, and refocusing on those with the highest needs. So the issue that I think that was most interesting was he's actually suggesting that the scheme itself, or the growth rate, will be capped at 2%. At the moment, it's growing at 10% per year. So it's kind of bizarre. And the argument that he's using is going, well, if we don't fix it now, this thing will become financially unsustainable and we won't be able to afford it. The other thing that he also introduced was he said it's going to be harder to get in. So we're moving to functional assessments. What can you do day by day from that point of view, which essentially means code, fewer people are going to qualify, and especially those in that mid-level and low level. So at the moment, we were accepting high level, mid-level, low level. Clearly what he's saying is low level and mid-level, you're out. This is just going to be for the high level. And I guess from that point of view is some of the participants were redirected back into state services. And I think you and I will both agree that the states have been a little bit lazy, particularly when the government came out with this policy. Our states got a little bit greedy and said, well, okay, that's cool. The federal government's doing all this. We won't do anything in that regard. So that was kind of cool. And I think the other thing that Mark Butler also raised was around tighter controls on spending. What he wanted to do was cap on support, stricter rules, and fraud crackdowns. Now, they've spoken about this for a while, as to whether or not they can do it. I guess from this point of view, and the first question off the bat there, Pat, NDIS, when it first came out, I think we all agree was a wonderful initiative. And from an altruistic perspective, I think every Australian would say, hey, people who are really struggling really need help. But it's fair to say the system got abused. Would you agree?
100%. You also, whenever it gets to young YouTubers calling out the rorts, that's when you know it's gotten way too far. Because we all knew when Julia Gillard made her speech in Parliament introducing the NDIS, everyone agreed that it was warranted and it was needed. But as always, governments put in these policies and they're just poorly executed every time. So something has to be done to fix it, because a lot of people are getting rich and a lot of people aren't getting the care they need.
Yeah, and then I think the other thing there too is I think what's happened here is the abuse in the system in terms of both the care providers and in terms of people wanting to get onto the system to get some sort of government benefit, as in it's an entitlement, I want it. You've got to sit back and go, well, actually, where is your condition on the scale of 1 to 10? Is it in the high level or is it the low level from that point of view? And I can understand parents going, I need a break. I can understand parents saying, it's too hard to always be the one in caring. But that's where the state then needs to step up. Now, the state charges us taxes, does all these sorts of things. They also have health ministers here in the state and all that kind of stuff. The state can't continually rely on the federal government to do everything for them, for God's sake.
Yeah, and that's what we saw. As soon as they introduced this, the state just washed their hands with it. And you see a lot of like government programs, state government programs like the Commonwealth Home Support. They're all the local councils are leaving that and saying, well, it's up to the home support care packages and the NDIS. But again, that just falls short.
It does. The other thing there too, Pat, I've also noticed it also means that the concept of community is lost.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these programs that were done by local councils and by the state government and so on, it meant that people stayed within their local community and they got to meet other people and all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden now, if they're only going out with one carer, they're not meeting anybody else. It becomes quite a lonely lifestyle from that point of view. This decision to refocus on high needs versus low needs, that's got to be a good thing. Yeah, that, like if we think about it, based on forecasts now, they were saying that within a couple of years, 900,000 people would be on the system. What they're looking at doing is capping that number down to 600,000. So that's a massive drop. Like at the moment, there's 760, and they were saying, well, within a couple of years it would be 900, and they're looking within 2 years to drop it down to 600. So that means we haven't had the growth, plus we've had 160 get kicked off the system. That seems fair, you reckon?
Yeah, there's that old saying, you're only as strong as your weakest link, and I feel like we do have to help all those in need. But the most vulnerable need to be protected first. And it looks like we're saying, it's a noble thing to do to look after everyone. But at some point, either councils, the states, local governments, someone has to help the rest, and the federal government has to focus on the most in need.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, look, I think, and we both agree on this one. When the government first introduced the policy itself, it was sound. And I think all Australians were like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And I think even when Bill Shorten came into power, in terms of Bill Shorten, when he was the minister for this particular initiative, he was pushing very hard on the waste side. He was pushing very hard on the fraud side. I don't believe many inroads were made there. I was mortified to hear Mark Butler describe that people could hand in an A4 piece of paper with some jotted notes and expect to get a payment from that, and payments being approved. I'm just, how do you do this?
we know all about filling in forms for governments, and it's not as simple as just putting it on an A4 piece of paper and just throwing it on their desk. There's a lot of dotting the I's and crossing the T's.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Now, thinking about this, what do you think will be the key challenges for the government in trying to bring this forward?
Well, again, it's just actioning the policy. They can change policy, but it actually comes down to how they action it and how they roll it out. So that's the key challenge again, and that's always with government. Governments brings in amazing policies, but they just can't follow through on them. And then that's when the sharks of the prize come in and just rot the systems. So again, rolling that out properly and quickly that's their huge challenge.
Yeah, I think the other challenge for the government too, just thinking out loud as you were talking, I reckon it'd get really tough when the Current Affair and the Herald Sun and the Age and all that kind of stuff all of a sudden have that, that poor family on the front page.
100%.
Who've now been, taken off the system, and they're missing out and all that kind of stuff. And you're always going to get the ones that fall through the crack. That's just the way this system works. And I think that's going to be the challenge. It's whether or not they're brave enough to put up with it. And it's whether or not the electorate turns against the government. Because if the electorate turns against the government, what you may see is the government then drifting back to reopening the door to this one. So I think the challenge is, you're right, execution. I think it'll be bravery in terms of just remaining resolute with the intent of what you're trying to do, and being prepared for the flack, because the flack's coming. You can't hide from that.
Yeah, exactly. And this is before an election as well.
Yeah, no. Elections are always fun. It's amazing how governments become stupid at that time. Now, let's drift onto the aged care, because one of the other things that Mark Butler brought up as well. So massive reforms in the NDIS space, which were extraordinary. And on top of this, what he's also doing now, he's looking to remove the private health insurance rebate for those who are over 65. And he did this on the grounds of intergenerational equity. So he's saying, well, the young people shouldn't be subsidising older people to get discounted health insurance. And so under the proposed changes, so the way this kind of system would work is that everybody now gets a standard rebate. So regardless of age, everyone's the same. So the impact for older Australians is they're going to lose part of the subsidy. So what that means is health cover becomes more expensive. So out-of-pocket premiums are going to go up, no matter what happens from that point of view. And what we may see is that some may drop cover entirely because it just becomes unaffordable, or they may reduce their private cover. Now, in terms of the government itself, the government's argument is, well, the government will save money on the rebate, and in saving that money of the rebate, they will be able to redirect monies into aged care, which they've estimated to be $3 billion. So this is not a small amount of cash. It's quite a large amount of money. And part of this was on the back of the Royal Commission. So if you remember, we had the Royal Commission into aged care. This was one of the suggestions that this needed to be fixed off. So I guess when we think about this sort of stuff, is this actually strengthening aged care, or is this just shifting costs from the government to older Australians? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. It depends on what side of the thing. Premiums, yes, they're already increased anyway because of the age for these people. So the premiums already are expensive. So the rebate is quite welcomed. But if they're taking away that rebate, I get they're trying to say that makes it fair for everyone. Everyone in Australia is the same. You know, you're not having people lifting the tide for other people. And then, yes, redirecting them back into aged care is amazing, because as much as people think aged care is expensive, it's heavily subsidised by the government. Heavily yeah, without everyone knowing, it's heavily subsidised by the government. So the more money they can push into aged care with this aging population, it's welcomed a lot. So I get it. Some people might drop their cover, stop using their cover, so they'll just rely on the public system with Medicare and the public system. So that there'll be pressure on that. But if they could redirect that into the services for aged care where those people might one day be, that has to be a good thing.
Yeah. Look, and I think that's probably my biggest worry here. Like I can see, you agree with the policy because you can see the logic of it, and $3 billion is not a small amount of cash by any stretch of the imagination. But you know, the reality, you know, the thing that you always sit back and wonder about, you know, when you think about these things, is you kind of go, well, okay, if people then go and drop this coverage, they don't have it anymore. What does it mean for private health or public health? What does it mean for the Medicare system? And, you know, my biggest fear here is tomorrow that all of a sudden, you know, the elderly turn around and go, well, this has become unaffordable. We can't afford it. And now we're just relying on this. And mate, you just need to go to emergency on a weekend or Monday to Friday, for God's sake. This is no picnic. It's a pain in the backside.
Touch wood, I don't have to.
Yeah, well, look, you're praying to the Almighty that you don't have to do that. That's for sure. Yeah. I guess from that point of view, this concept of generational inequity, you know, getting the young people to fund, or in essence, funding the older generation, there's an element of truth to that.
Yes, and you can talk about the similar aspect with the tax system with superannuation pensions, where they pay 0% tax, whereas a young person uses the marginal tax rate, and that's obviously subsidised by that. So I guess that's another challenge for the government. How do they make this equitable for everyone?
Well, it's funny you should raise that, buddy, because I find it interesting that 3 weeks out or 2 weeks out before the budget, the government's now launching policies.
I find this amazing, because even Tanya Plibersek the other day was having an argument with Barnaby Joyce, and he was saying, what taxes are you bringing in? She goes, we never talk about the budget before it's released. You know that's never happened. And now they're talking about the budget before it's released. So I don't know what they've got coming up in the budget, if this is a bit of a white flag to throw in front of us beforehand. So I think tax reforms are going to be on the agenda.
Oh, look, I think you're right, Pat, and I think that the government, I think this is going to be a doozy of a budget. And I think it's going to be an interesting one from that point of view. I think with the scope and the magnitude of change, so, you know, be it NDIS, also be it around the aged care piece from that point of view and removing a rebate from that end, I think what they wanted to do is give themselves a free runway on that tax side of things.
Yeah.
The interesting thing will be is with these savings that they're making. So if you think about $35 billion saving over the forward estimates on NDIS, moving what was an expense on the healthcare rebate, redirecting that to aged care, so not having to find new money for that. Clearly, it looks like they're focusing on making sure that they've got enough room to pay down debt, which I think is really important. But I reckon on top of changes that I think there will be changes in respect to capital gains and potentially negative gearing, I reckon there might be a tax cut as a sweetener. What do you think?
Well, there's already going to be the tax cuts that's already factored in.
Yep.
But they're going to have to do something if they're going to be taking away a discount on the capital gains. and also the taboo topic in inheritance tax, which
Well,
has been
don't go there, buddy. Don't go there, buddy. You're starting a war. Don't go there.
I don't want it to be a part of the tax system or the tax law, but I feel like that might be the bomb that they drop.
Yeah, look, it's going to be fascinating because for the government to be looking to save that much money, I think you just sit back and go, wow, that's a fairly decent saving on the NDIS piece. Given that they're not then using that money to then go into aged care, you kind of go, well, okay, that's cool. We still got $35 billion available. You kind of go, well, I understand paying back debt. That makes a lot of sense. We're getting close to $1 trillion worth of borrowing, so we want to be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
In saying that, I think it would be a very dangerous game if they don't give something back to a public. I think a public would be really annoyed.
Yeah. I think exactly the same as well. There's got to be something. They can't just take and not give. But yeah, those the stage tax cuts are already in for 2026. So maybe they're going to be changing that a bit. I'm not sure.
Yeah, who knows, mate? Who knows? Mate, look, it's going to be fascinating. I'm really looking forward to budget night. I dare say it'll be a glass of wine and some popcorn.
I think this will be the biggest budget we've had in a long time.
Yeah, look, you know what? And if he lets us down, I'll be really annoyed, let me tell you.
What, government's letting you down?
Oh, come on, Pat. You know that. They never do that, buddy. They never do that. Now, mate, tomorrow is probably one of the greatest days of the year in Australia. And tomorrow we pause to recognise Anzac Day. And it's a time to honour the courage, the sacrifice, and the spirit of all those who served. And it's also a moment, I think, which is really important to reflect on what those sacrifices have made possible. You know, for us, it's the freedoms, it's the stability, it's the opportunities we take. And more often than not, Pat, we take them for granted, I dare say. And it came at the cost paid by others. Now, living in Australia, I think we both agree, we've been handed something incredibly rare. You know, safety, opportunity, and quality of life around the world that, you know, if we think about anyone else around the world, they could only hope for that sort of stuff. And in many ways, I think it was Tony Abbott who used the phrase, we've won the lottery of life. So one thing I would do, and tomorrow being the day from that point of view, I'd encourage all our clients is take a moment tomorrow, you know, for that. And just take a moment just to reflect with gratitude and say, well, wow, that was pretty cool in terms of what these people did for us, because the lives we enjoy and savour is on the back of the hard work of the other people, and we just need to be grateful for that. Is that a fair statement, my friend?
Yeah, very fair. And actually tonight with the football, one of my good friends, he's actually lighting the cauldron.
Oh wow!
Yeah, Captain Jeremy Smith. He did 3 tours in Iraq, and
that is extraordinary.
Yeah, and he's doing a lot of work now for mental health.
Yep.
And like he said, in the last 3 years, he's written 2 eulogies for really good friends that have taken their life. Which he served with. So he's trying to bring a lot of awareness to that now for service heroes that are back home, and he's so he'll be lighting the cauldron at the football tonight.
Yep. To Jeremy, you know, one, we're appreciative of everything he does for Australia and for protecting our way of life, and two, for the work that he keeps on doing. You know, to serve and to be selfless, that is just an extraordinary trait, and you know, it's a life well lived. So we appreciate people like that. And tomorrow too, mate, it wouldn't be Anzac Day if Essendon wasn't playing Collingwood. Any chance of us beating the Pies, mate?
I'm always optimistic. I think we're a good chance. I think we've got our run going all right at the moment. So we've sort of come into some sort of form. So at least it's not going to be a total whitewash. So I'm confident, somewhat confident.
Mate, I'd be a lot happier if Ridley was playing in the back line, mate. I'd be a lot happier. But yeah, look, mate, I want to give him my calves because I haven't used mine. I haven't used mine. You can have mine, mate. That's just the way it would be, I reckon.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fair enough, too, mate. Now, what have you got planned on the weekend outside of tomorrow's festivities, watching the football and Anzac Day? What have you got planned, mate?
Just kids' sports. Golf tomorrow morning, and then football on Sunday. And I'll go to the match tomorrow as well.
Oh, nice. Magnificent day. Well, look, it's going to be a cracking weekend in terms of weather-wise and all that kind of stuff. And all I would encourage people to do, given the week that we've had here at Innate Wealth with the passing of someone we love dearly from that point of view, is we'd encourage you to get out there, embrace life, and spend time with those that are near and dear, and just enjoy. You know, we're in that final burst of autumn, which is probably the greatest time of the year in Melbourne, I reckon. So we're in that final burst before the cold starts to kick in. It's a bit cold in the mornings, Pat, I've noticed too. It's not fun.
Yeah, that's this last little bit of tease before winter. It's like how good is Australia with this weather, and then bang.
Yeah, no, I'm hearing you, mate. I'm hearing you. Well, look, mate, you have a wonderful weekend. To all our clients out there too, may you all have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy yourselves. As we said, get out there, have a lot of fun from that end. To Mirko, our hearts go out to you, buddy. We love you lots. We love what you do, and our clients do as well. And we know you're hurting. Just know that we're here to hold you. So don't stress, mate. We're standing right behind you from that point of view. And to our staff, as always, thank you for all that you do. And until next week, we'll catch you then. All the very best. Cheers, guys.
Goodbye.